Coming up, finding buried treasure in tenants, toilets, termites, and trash. We're turning the mic over to local investor and commercial property manager with Bold City Commercial, Tim Horvath. But first, a tasty musical treat from one of Jacksonville's very own Firewater Tent Revival. Hello, Jacksonvillians. I'm your host, Ian Brown. This is the Jacksonville Commercial Real Estate Show, where we bring you dynamic local entrepreneurs, deal makers, and thought leaders ready to dive deep, unpack the local commercial market so you can invest with greater confidence and accelerate your own success. This show is lovingly produced by yours truly and Yield Coach Capital. To stay up to date on Jacksonville's nuanced commercial real estate market, real estate events, and investment opportunities, go to investwiththecoach.com, answer a couple questions, and join the team. In exchange, you'll receive 107 questions to ask a deal sponsor so you're better prepared when evaluating your next real estate investment. Today, I'm here with local investor and commercial property manager with Bold City Commercial, Tim Horvath. Tim, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me, Ian.
Well, I like to start with this burning question. You have an interesting background as a CRNA. I have to confess, I cannot say the word nurse anesthetist, so I'll do my best there. But what made you jump from the security of this advanced nursing world to a full-time real estate investment and property manager?
Yeah, no, it's been a long time coming. I mean, it took me a long time to get my doctorate, so it's not, and it was, like you said, a secure job. They called it the golden handcuffs, so it wasn't a decision I took lightly. I've been investing in real estate for a while now, so it wasn't just a sudden change. It's been something that I've progressively been doing, building up my personal commercial real estate portfolio, which allowed me income to when I did make the jump, I had income coming in. And then started the brokerage to start a property management company was the intent. And that started taking off, and the burnout of healthcare industry, which is a big issue, healthcare burnout and advanced professionals, just overcame it. And I said, it's time to make the jump, and did it.
Now, I believe you're a Jacksonville native, or at least you're a UNF guy. Is that correct?
Born and raised, and all my degrees are from UNF. Yes, sir.
Very cool. Very cool. Yep, I am a Jacksonville native as well. Did peel off to Washington State of all places for a while. My family was out there, and then came back and went to FSU, and then back to Jacksonville in 2001, and here I am, 2024.
Love it.
Pretty confident I'll be buried in the city one day. So, but not yet. We got some real estate deals to talk about. So, what got you? I assume as an advanced nurse, and then it sounds like your doctorate degree. What triggered you from that profession? Because I must confess, I've happily remarried. My first wife was actually a CRNA, and I didn't know many people in her world that were in real estate or investing, or even it's so siloed, so much time in the hospital, so competitive, so high pressure. I just didn't know many people stepping out into other investments. So what made you do it?
Yeah, and I agree with your statement. I do see it becoming more and more kind of common. But it was, I've always heard growing up, real estate's the number one way millionaires are made. Obviously a lot of people aspire to have good wealth. I went into the healthcare industry, which is a whole different story, and I traveled down that route, but always the goal was that was the stable income, and I would use that money to invest in real estate. So it was always part of the goal. I didn't know the goal was to get out eventually. Like, I never thought I'd actually be completely out, like I kind of am. But things started changing in the healthcare industry, and not for the better. There's buyouts that just, especially since COVID, everything was accelerated, and the healthcare industry has really changed and made me realize that I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want my income and my daily life to be dependent on that world.
Now, I was thinking about this before we got going. Were there people watching you and your success and what you were doing, kind of looking over your shoulder and like, hey, Tim, I want in? Like, maybe people that want to like co-invest with you passively, or perhaps not passively, maybe actually get active as a general partner. But did anybody come along with you from your medical community for the ride?
No. I mean, it was always a topic of conversation, especially one of the first buildings I purchased commercially that was larger was right across from the hospital. So my name was always right. It was the old Chamber of Commerce building in Clay County. And that's literally across from the hospital. So it was always a topic of discussion. I never wanted to involve outside capital personally. I have a business partner who in that commercial world who's a financial advisor, and his big thing was he deals with people's money on the regular. He doesn't want to deal with it outside of that. This is for me, it's an escape from healthcare. For him, it was an escape from that world. So he was
Hmm.
kind of resistant to it, and I understood the and empathized.
Now, Tim, did you start with, and that's interesting. You bought that former, it sounds like municipal building across from the hospital. Did you start with single family houses like a lot of people do, and then kind of go up the food chain, or how did that evolve?
I did. Yeah, it was 2013, and I was building up a residential portfolio after I graduated. I graduated in 2012 and started making money. And I stumbled into a commercial property in Mandarin, which it's another story, but long story short, it was a commercial property that was mismarketed. Stumbled into it. It was a no-brainer. Started to learn about commercial real estate because it was not even on my radar. And it was a little deal, which ended up turning in very well, but still on a smaller scale comparatively. And that's what opened my eyes into the commercial real estate world. And I realized this is the way I want to go versus dealing with a bunch of residential rentals, doing things on a bigger scale, bigger level in the commercial world.
And just drilling down a little deeper on that topic, because it is a common crossroads. Not everybody actually makes the jump. I'd say most people do not actually make the jump from single family residential to any kind of commercial. I'd say most don't even make the jump to multifamily above 4 units. So, um, I think that there's that, call it the imposter syndrome, the fear of the unknown, whatever it is. But I think it's difficult now in the days of podcasting and YouTube and a lot of free flowing information online. You might be able to feel a little more emboldened, but it's still a pretty big leap for people to go from single family houses into commercial buildings. So, like, let's talk about, it sounds like one of the first deals you did was in Mandarin. Did you have to let's talk about that deal a little bit. You have to place the tenants. Now you have commercial lending. We are going to get into the fact that you also have a brokerage and management operation to kind of dovetail with your investment. But let's take it one bite at a time. That office building that you were referencing, did you have to all of a sudden now start marketing this property for commercial tenancy?
I wish there was some harrowing story, but man, it was fortunate. This situation I walked into would be ideal for any person. It was 2000, like I said, 13, 14, and the deal was the realtor was marketing on hot pads, which back then Zillow didn't own hot pads, and it was like for $50,000, so not much. And it was in Mandarin, and it was a 1,200 square foot commercial condo unit, part of a 23 unit. So I knew for 50,000 you couldn't go wrong. I actually got it for 35, so I bought it cash. After I closed, he said, "Hey, by the way, there was someone that was looking to rent this if you're interested." I said, "Sure, give me their information." Gave it to me. It was a woman. She came, looked at it the next day. I was like, "Hey, I was excited. I'm like, I'm gonna rehab this. I'm gonna update this for you." Like I was excited to do something. She's like, "No, it's fine the way it is. I'll take it." That was it. She was a great paying tenant, and yeah, I held on to that unit for a while.
Do you remember what I know it's probably been a while, a decade. Do you remember what she paid?
Yeah, for like it was like just under 1,200 square feet. She paid 1,400, and she was responsible and that was the big thing with commercial. She was responsible for everything, and inside that unit, or the HOA was responsible for the exterior. She was responsible for the inside. So I didn't get one complaint, one issue.
So you got, let's see here, just under, mental math on a podcast is tough, just under $17,000 a year for someone to come in and rent a unit that you just paid 38,000 for. So
Yeah,
a victory right out of the gates. And that's a lot better math than you're going to see in a housing deal.
for sure.
Now, kind of looking forward, you go from that. What's a typical deal that you pursued after that, or how have things evolved from that smaller acquisition with great margin to what you did in between and are doing now?
Yeah, there was a little lull in between there, and then I ended up, I was buying little stuff, like everything was I still did a couple residential after that, flips. But commercial, I would say when I partnered up with my current partner is when we really got serious about commercial real estate. And that was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And the first purchase we did together was that old Chamber of Commerce building. Um, and things have changed, as you know, with lending too, right? Like things have changed. There's a pre-COVID, post-COVID, and now there's like another change in regards to obviously interest rates and what how that's changed the markets and how you have to shift on that. Because we were buying empty buildings back then, and we were doing the value add of, we would rehab them and put tenants in it, and that automatically increased the value. And then after COVID, banks were no longer lending on empty office building. No banks, no traditional banks that we were using. I'm sure you can find lenders, but traditional banks were. So then they wanted a certain debt to service cover ratio, and we were still trying to look. We didn't have much capital, so we were still looking for deals, but the deals had to meet the bank's criteria. It couldn't just be a vacant building. So then we found like the next biggest thing was 70% occupied. It was a 35,000 square foot office complex. And this is actually at the height of COVID. And we purchased that building and rented out that following 30%. And then we bought another adjacent property next to it, 35,000 square foot. And that one was 40% occupied, but we basically um, put in the cash and then financed out. So we could no longer buy vacant buildings, which is what our initial model was because they were less expensive and we could do the value add. And then our model changed to you have to buy a certain percentage that the banks were okay lending on. And then we've kind of gone more into the cash. And we're actually now at this phase where we're exploring because we've gotten more comfortable. We're exploring bigger deals and bringing in limited partners to be the financial backing on it. So that's kind of, I would say, the evolution of our purchasing.
Yeah, and I wish you the best with the syndication effort and raising from limited partners. We just crossed the 1 year mark on the 506C syndication I did with my partner Eric Bumgardner in Alachua County last year. That was 170 industrial acres, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's we'll save that for maybe outside the podcast. I could probably do a whole nother episode on it. But
Okay.
yeah, a lot of lessons learned. We'll certainly talk after this, Tim. So, but yeah, I will say the syndication route can be good. I will say if you want a real dose of humility, go out and raise private capital. We got it done. And I feel like I have a pretty darn good reputation, and so does my partner. But I will say it can be a humbling process. So clearly, as you start to buy these buildings that are much larger than you started, is this where your real estate company, the brokerage, and the management started to come into play, or when did you start to insert or develop your Bold City platform?
Yeah, we were both working full-time jobs, so we were looking for property managers to manage our properties. And what we felt were it was hard to even get a call back from some companies, some of these real estate brokerages that had property management. So we were kind of disappointed in what was out there. So we opted to bring someone in-house that we trained to manage our properties. And we were fortunate that we knew we had the systems and platforms because all of our properties were 100% occupied personally. And most of our stuff, over 90% of our portfolio is office space. So we knew what we were doing was good. And we brought someone in with the long-term goal of, hey, if we can train him appropriately, why don't we do this for others? He would be that individual would be the center of the day-to-day operations with our support. So that was kind of where we went with it. We brought someone in, we trained them. They were good at their job, and we decided to start the brokerage and start our own property management company. And that's where that started. And then what we quickly learned, the goal was always just to do property management for others and create that recurring revenue system. But you're getting all these lead. What you learn is with property management for commercial side of things, investors are your clients, right? Typically, investors own commercial real estate and they want to buy or sell. Well, who are they going to want to utilize when they go to buy or sell their property? Ideally, you, because that's who they have the relationship with if you're the manager. Also, you're getting all these leads funneling in, and they're calling for properties that you have, and these would be considered warm leads in the sense of even if they don't work for a property you're managing or that you own, they still need to find something. So then we felt the need to bring in agents because I wasn't personally pursuing these leads. And this is money for agents that we could both benefit on. So that it's grown from, hey, we just want to have our own portfolio to, hey, we're going to help other people manage to, hey, we need agents to help us buy and sell and lease out all these leads that are coming to us. So it's kind of organically happened.
Now, a little more nuanced. It sounds like you've leased up, I don't know, tens of thousands of square feet of office. And so I would argue that's probably, at least at the time of this recording, one of the more challenging commercial asset classes to keep full. And it doesn't sound like you had a previous expertise in commercial office leasing. So somewhere in that statement lies a question. How did you manage to take on these buildings, kind of know what to do with them, and then lease up what sounds like tens of thousands of square feet of office in Northeast Florida?
Yeah, I mean, within our personal portfolio, it's hundreds thou hundred close to 100,000. And I'll speak on that to start with. And it was truthfully, it was it was price point speaks volumes, right? Like if you're buying, and this is what's happening, I don't want to get off thought, but if you're offering a good product under market value, you're likely going to rent, right? Like people still need office space then, they still need it now, they still want it now. And if you are affordable and you have a layout, because most of our, even though we have bigger buildings, they're chopped up. You can get a 500 square foot office. You can get within ours, you can get a 100 square foot office. We also have an 8,000 square foot office, but we chop things up that work for the tenants and the price point that we have because we bought right, we can undercut the market. So that right there, if you're offering a good product at a lower rate than anyone around you, you're gonna fill up before the others, right?
So
And
configuration and pricing.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's not rocket science from that side of things. Um,
When I
and that's
saw
what
Tim, not to cut you off, on your website, you do have some 3D tours, and I feel like you're bringing. Let me see here. You're bringing some of the what I almost consider like the residential. I must confess, I'm a commercial guy. I do end up doing a couple little residential pet projects a year, but I will say that the commercial guys sometimes get spanked a little bit by the marketing efforts of the residential guy until you move way up the food chain and you get into like sophisticated investment sales and some really higher end leasing. But you start to fall below that commercially. Like you said, you were making phone calls that were not getting returned. You try to call on signs and nobody calls you back. You can't get information on things. So uh, not to disparage all my commercial brokerage brethren, but some of these like slightly less than premium properties do not get a fair exposure. So I could see you coming in there and bringing light to them and really doing well, especially if you purchase them right and you configure them in a desirable way. Didn't mean to cut you off there, but I noticed you're definitely bringing some exposure to properties that wouldn't always get it.
you're right, and I don't want to just downplay it because the thing I always say is if you answer your phone right, because so many people come to us and they're just like no one would answer the phone. Like we get owners that want to lease their property and they end up with us because no one else answered the phone. We get clients that are like, hey, I tried to lease this other property but they didn't answer their phone. Like just by answering your phone or being responsive in a short time manner alone puts you ahead of a large part of the competition. And then, the mark from a marketing standpoint, you just I call it the obviously you have to make sure people know about it, right? So how do you market? I just put, we always have a sign out front for local traffic. Depending on the property type, right? You put it on Craigslist for certain clients, different personnel, and then LoopNet and Crexy. Like you market it across that. You can use Facebook Marketplace if you want, but you market it out there and you respond. Like it's not too hard.
I love the perspective of an outside, and I'm going to call you an outside guy because you've transitioned from industries. And even though you're not green, I'm not going to say you don't know what you're doing. it's funny for me to look at to hear those statements, and I'm not saying they're not, they are actually probably pretty true, but what you've done is you've kind of cut through a lot of the chatter and the fluff, and you're just executing. It's as simple as picking up the phone when people call. I remember seeing phone calls go unanswered. I remember seeing emails, oh, somebody needs 1,000 square feet short term. Well, if somebody has 800 to 1,200 square foot leasing inquiry, um, and they don't sound like they know what they're doing, and they want it for under 3 years, mathematically there's not a lot of a commission in there. So sometimes, unfortunately, those people go unserved. But here you are,
Yeah.
sometimes the building owner, and you're and placing them in your buildings. All
Yeah.
right, on the I noticed that you also, you know, I don't know if you do a lot of investment sales, but definitely the management. I saw your CCIM designation and your involvement there. It's a very reputable organization for, investment commercial real estate. So I went through all the MAI training and certified general appraiser. It feels like a life ago, but I always had a lot of respect. So that's obviously an appraisal track. I always had a lot of respect on the brokerage side for the CCIMs because I'm not going to say it's apples to apples, but it's very close. Usually your CCIM designation brokers definitely know their way through cash flows and valuation. So, can you speak to your involvement with that chapter? Are you active?
Yeah, I mean, with truthfully, there's not too much to speak on that front at the moment. Like the CCIM North Florida chapter, so we have an agent that's with us. He's part of our brokerage. His name is Matthew, and he's the current president. And he's 10-year experience. He's got his MBA. He's got all the good credentials. He was brought in. He was brought in by CCIM to help run this chapter, and he asked me to assist, so I kind of got that designation. It's still something that's a process in the works. Truthfully, the North Florida chapter specifically needs help, and we're trying to create that help. So it's an active process, but right now I would say there's a lot of help needed in the North Florida chapter of CCIM.
Okay, good to know. I've grown a little weary of picking up degrees and designations and certifications. However, I will keep that in mind because I have some friends and colleagues that I know are considering the designation. It does carry a good reputation
It's good.
nationally.
It's good education. It's very good
Yeah.
education when you go through their seminars and everything. But
hmm
I'm just specifically speaking about the North Florida chapter. I'm not speaking on it as a whole.
I totally understand. The industry that I started in, commercially appraisal, it literally an industry in decline. It has more attrition. It has more people retiring or dying than coming in. And of course, you still need valuation. So unless you start to switch underwriting or switch to algorithms, and commercial real estate is not well suited for algorithm style valuation. It is you must make adjustments in commercial real estate. It's not like a subdivision residentially where you get to have all these sales, similar floor plans, similar year built, similar build out. You just don't get that. So I do think that both those industries, there's a lot of overlap. There's also some future concern. There's not a ton of people coming in either.
Yeah.
Going back to your Bold City property management. Are you managing any non-office? Is office your specialty? I'd like to know kind of the
No.
scope and breadth.
Yeah. No. We actually manage. I own mainly office, but we actually manage mostly non-office. So, industrial retail is what I would say is the majority of what we manage. I mean, there's of course office in there, but no, it's not limited to anything, and by any means.
Are you seeing a strain like in the Jacksonville office segment? I know you already said you're kind of buying by the pound, you're buying with discount, you can price yourself to stay full, but I do believe you probably have an eye towards the market that not everybody would have. So I know that, take downtown, for instance, downtown towers, a lot of that leasing is just moving from one tower to another tower to another tower. So what's called net absorption is not usually very impressive. What are you seeing in more of this like kind of suburban, somewhat scattered, single story office product? Do you have any observations on trends in Northeast Florida?
Yeah, I do. I mean, obviously it's anecdotal and it's interesting because that's another advantage an unknown advantage that I started to gather from the property management company in the sense of, we manage properties outside of places that we personally invest. So when you start to manage those properties, you really get to learn about that area firsthand, right? Like you can see stuff. Leasing is always kind of price points are hard to, you have CoStar, but it's not necessarily the most accurate information. So gaining lease terms and price point firsthand by managing other people's properties has really given me insights to pockets all over the city. And that's pretty cool because it's actually opened me up to more areas where you wouldn't think you would be getting good rentals. You are in other places where you might not think it'd be the best rents. I mean, and vice versa. So I've gotten these data points firsthand all over the city, and but which has been an added benefit to owning the company, right? But as far as to answer your question, office space, truthfully, it depends on the area, right? But like Nocatee, we have stuff out there. I mean, through the roof. Arlington has done pretty good based on price point. The beach does good. So, I mean, most of these areas, I'm not really seeing, we don't really have much downtown personally, like expect at the core of downtown. Um, but you see attrition, you see people defaulting, but there is still people coming in to fill those voids. So I haven't really seen, maybe people get a little more owners are a little more lax on the price points because of the narrative that's being painted, which honestly helps us lease out those properties like, hey, if they do have some vacancies, they're not waiting for top dollar. They're more willing to taking a client maybe for a little under market potentially to ride the wave. But overall, we're fortunate, I feel, to be in Jacksonville.
Have you noticed, there's a common operational complaint in Florida. Have you noticed insurance starting to really beat up your
Oh
P&L
yeah.
with the stuff that you own and manage?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, here's one example, and this still blows my mind. So when we were talking about, so the two buildings I have next to each other on Atlantic and Century are combined 70,000 square feet. And we pay, I mean, when we first bought them, it was like 10,000 in insurance, and now it's like 25 or whatever. Okay, 25 a year. That's fine. So we underwrote a property down the road. It's the same square footage, but one story or one building. So same, so it's like 7 stories, like 75,000 square feet. So a little bigger than ours, but one roof, one property, same square footage. When we underwrote it, we couldn't find an insurance quote less than $150,000 a year. So I was like, you use your math and you're like, oh, we'll be at like 25, 30 for this. And then you go to underwrite it and our two brokers can't find anything for less than 150. That blows up a deal.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when we, yeah, I mean, it's just like, and then you really realize how much insurance can truly control, how much they can compress or negatively impact commercial property. I mean, residential too, but from a commercial standpoint, that crushes.
hmm Well, yeah, just on a super generous 10 cap, you're talking about over $1 million value swing just on an insurance quote because that's
It's
just it runs
crazy.
straight to the NOI line. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know there are investors that in multifamily, I hear it probably the most, but I did want to ask you that question where they're starting to look into some inland or non-Florida locations for their 1031 placement, trying to get some more predictability in their insurance markets. We have an 83 unit, a partner and I have an 83 unit in Valdosta, and we've been fortunate that insurance stayed pretty low. We've had it coming up on 6 years. However, even up there in Georgia, where some investors are fleeing from Florida up into Georgia with some of their investments to avoid insurance hikes, we still had a significant bump. It wasn't 150; it was in the 40s for an 83 unit, but still, and Valdosta got hit with a hurricane. Some of these do roll into that state. So I think
Uh-huh.
operationally, when these properties can't pass through, and you talk like say I had a retail person on and they're going to do traditionally triple net leasing, it's still burdensome. Obviously, you can't overburden your tenant, but when these expenses are passed through, it's obviously a little less of an operational issue until it becomes a tenant issue they can't bear. However, with these full service or gross or modified gross lease structures, like you tend to have an office, the owner just has to eat it. And so, you lock in these leases at 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, throw some renewals in there, and all of a sudden, okay, you've capped your revenue, you know right where it is, you just agreed to it. And then you have these variable expenses. It's funny, insurance is considered a fixed expense, but we know it's not.
Yeah.
And then you have
I
insurance come in like that and just erode your NOI and erode your value. So it's a real issue.
it is. I echo everything you just said. And it's like, and to your point, right? Like most tenants don't understand this stuff. Most people don't understand this stuff. And it's most people that are not investors don't understand this stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's when rental rates, when people go to renew and we have, I mean, the cost of everything. Like I did a roof on one of our buildings and it was $150,000. And when I bought it 2 years previous, I was quoted 100,000. ACs, we're doing ACs for 20 to 40,000 a pop. Like, yeah, I mean, things are expensive. The cost of the game is high.
Now, you mentioned earlier, the debt world is frothy. It's tricky right now. It's not even just the interest rates. It's the availability of the debt is becoming an issue. So it's like, yes, you had available debt at high leverage and a low rate. Wonderful. Well, let's dismiss the interest rate discussion because we've all had that one before, but even just the availability of the credit, the availability of the loan product is starting to become a problem. And then if it is available, it's at such a poor LTV, people are starting to think, well, maybe I do need to syndicate. Maybe I do need limited partners because all of a sudden this capital requirement just became huge.
Mhm.
If you do a relative, in commercial real estate, $1 million deal, a $2 million deal, they're not small, but they're not huge. They're significant, but they're not huge. And you start to think about, well, what if I had to raise, $1 million to buy a $2 million building? Like these are like versus you might have been able to raise $1 million and buy a $5 million building a few years
Yeah.
ago. So it's
Yeah.
it's a significant change, and it either shows up in what you're buying, how much of it you're buying, and maybe you move into different asset classes. But I'm gonna tease a question out of all that. But I think my question for you would be, here we are, we're recording in April of 2024. What is your kind of like your outlook for the next 12 months? I tend to not ask guests to go beyond that because it's hard. We are in an election year, and I think that some people are. I've been to two different conferences. A lot of people seem to be forecasting a very similar year to 2023. I will say, in my world, and it could be totally anecdotal and situational, I just have had an uptick in just the phone ringing or emails or looks at deals. Just there's just been a little bit of an influx in opportunity, and I will say those that can transact that are not that they are not waiting on a banker's term sheet. So like seller financing or owner users or leases, commercially, those still seem to have momentum and traction. If your deal is going into underwriting at a bank, I wouldn't put a super high probability on it right now, or it's going to have to get retraded. But I'll pause there. What are you seeing for 2024 in your world?
Yeah, I mean, there's this big disconnect, everyone wants to still like the reality hasn't because we know in the next year and a half, 2 years, 50% of loans are coming due. They're supposed to be paying in the market. The reality is banks will probably extend for a little bit. So yeah, so people are still wanting to sell top dollar. Buyers are, whether if they can buy, right? Like they're looking for deals because they feel there's blood in the water. So I still feel there's that disconnect between buyers and sellers. You're seeing that in the ask price versus certain things not trading. I agree with you. I have gotten more looks at certain things. I think things are starting to kind of come around, but similar to other buyers, it's like there is the unknown. So like for me, I'm not unless it's a great deal, I'm not jumping for a good deal right now. I do feel there's more pain coming in the market. Um, I don't have a crystal ball, but this is just the research I've personally seen. And I'm not jump happy. We do have a line of credit on our properties, so we can buy things cash and if we need be. Obviously, it'd have to be turn around and be refinanced, and they would be more the bank that has our line of credit would be more inclined to loan on it at a better rate, right, to make the situation better. But if it's not a great deal, I'm personally not buying, which has made me set my sights on growing the property management business to kind of keep me busy, allow revenue to increase. And then ideally, as these scenarios start to unfold where there are better situations to buy then. Um, does that answer your roundabout question?
Yeah, it's a very fair answer. I mean, you're ramping up services. You keep oil in the tank. You have your cash flow coming in through property management. It gives you an early look at deals, like you said before, and you just pick up tips and tricks to manage your own properties better. And I don't know about you. For me, there might be a year that goes by that I don't buy anything. And there might be a year that comes up where I buy a handful of things. So it just, it all just depends. I'm a smaller opportunistic local investor. And I tend to find my opportunities through relationships. Everyone kind of has a superpower. Some people just grind and underwrite, 10 deals a day until they find the one they like and they write a lot of offers. That's not really my style. I tend to meet with a lot of people, talk to a lot of people, prospect through the human side, and find things generally that I can change in a way that somebody can't change. I think that I'll still be able to do that in 2024 and beyond. That concept in real estate, like insider trading is legal. That's my favorite thing about commercial real estate and real estate in general is that whole insider trading is legal notion. And I don't know of another investment where I can legally borrow money from an institution to go in and buy at a discount that no one else can get. I can't go to Apple and offer them 50% of the value of the stock and buy it. So many people have heard that statement, but by God, it makes a huge difference. And then guys like you and I, we can change the value of an asset. We can rezone it. We can rehab it. We can get a change in use. We can re-tenant it. There's so many things you can do to create value, and more than we can talk about on this episode. All right, Tim, we're going to go into the closing questions. I know you're local. Why do you love Jacksonville?
Yeah, I mean, I have a love for Jax. I'm born and raised here, right? So this is where family, this is where I call home. But to go outside of that notion, I have been fortunate to travel all over the world, which there's many beautiful places. But I think A, I have my roots here, but B, I truly do see a lot of opportunity here. So not only just the family life, but also the business life can both succeed here. And I really do like that. And then you got the beach. I live at the beach. I mean, granted, there's more beautiful beaches elsewhere, but this is what I call home. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You see a lot of investors that have to invest far, far, far away from home to get any kind of rate of return. And here we are. You're able to live and work and have success and grow your business right here in your own hometown. It's great. You got a favorite local restaurant for us?
Yeah, I'm a big barbecue guy, and Butt Hut is a good a favorite of mine. I'm partial to it because I own the land that they rent, or I own the building and they rent it there. But it actually is it's a very good restaurant. It's over there in Murray Hill area. Butt Hut Barbecue.
Nice. Is that the one that's on the peninsula?
It was the old Island Bar. Yeah,
I know exactly. I used to live right around there. I know what you're talking about. And I was on planning commission when you guys came through for some entitlements. Wonderful.
yeah.
I
Well,
have
thank
not
you
eat,
for
I have not eaten there though. Yeah, yes, you're welcome. You got them. I just got to go patronize and eat.
yeah, for sure.
Favorite place or location in Jacksonville?
The beach, man. There's just something, there's science to it, right? The ions and all that fun stuff you can talk about. But when you're out here and it's good weather, it just part of the reason because I lived in Mandarin and I was working in Orange Park, and I even moved out to the beach when I was still working in Orange Park because that mental shift when you're over here, it's something it very relaxing when I'm on
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, people don't move to the beach to be fussy.
Yeah,
You
true.
get over there, you're around a lot of people that have intentionally relocated to that area to be just like you described, lower that blood pressure a little bit. Um,
For sure.
all right, lastly, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, there's my social, Bold City Commercial. They can reach out to me on my website, boldcitypm.com. That's our management website. I would say those are two easy access points.
Awesome. All right, Tim, I really do appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. And everybody, please rate, review, and follow this podcast on whatever platform you're enjoying it. Some of you guys are watching this on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe. Makes a huge difference for us and allows us to bring great guests like we had with Tim today. As I mentioned at the top of the show, to never miss a beat, go to investwithacoach.com, enter your basic info, and never miss another investment, networking, or educational opportunity. If you like to scroll, we are Yield Coach on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And that's a wrap on this Jacksonville Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Ian Brown, signing off and reminding everybody to lace up and leave it all on the field. Yield Coach out.